Come on and take a free ride. Come on and let it by your side. Come on and take a free ride. Do 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 do.
Dooby dooby doo. Dooby dooby doo. Dooby dooby doo. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. Dooby dooby doo. Dooby dooby doo. Dooby dooby doo. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. Dooby dooby doo. Dooby dooby doo. Dooby dooby doo. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati.
All right. Happy Tuesday, guys. Welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you are new, I want to let you know that Sabby Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursdays for the Sabby and JB show. And you can catch me here on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and every other Sunday. Welcome back, guys. I hope you had a great holiday weekend. Believe it or not, some crazy, wild news happened on Christmas Day, and we are going to cover that tonight. But other than that, I hope you guys had a good weekend. I want to start out by giving shout outs to people in the chat. Let's go ahead and do the damn thing. What's going on? P. Smith says the 12 days of Christmas start today and go until January 6th. Have a blast. P. Smith is also a Sabby patron. Shout out to Keith for becoming a Sabby member. Let's give Keith a big whoop whoop in the house. What's going on? JB says, hello all, forehead kisses. Shout out to Devotion says, forehead kisses to you, JB Font. Greetings, Dr. Nick says, hi, everybody. Great to see you, Sabby. Let's give a shout out for MMMM, not to be confused with Eminem or M&M's. For becoming a Sabby member, let's give MMMM a big whoop whoop. What's going on? Lawrence says, Shaka when the walls fell. Lawrence is also a Sabby member. Greetings, Golden Monarch says, Whitney Webb destroyed what Bitcoin did. A crypto bro YouTuber. I'll have to check that out. What's going on? James Green says, bring it. It's already been brought in. That's from Bring It On, for those who don't know. Shout out to Hannah G says, let's go. Let's give a big whoop whoop to Keith Evans for becoming a Sabby member. Let's give Keith a big whoop whoop. Shout out to Larez says, hello, Sabrina, Eric, and Sabby fam. Geez, RAPAPORT versus SHAUN is cringe versus cringe. Accusations of Semitism just isn't hitting like it used to. Great show on Sunday, Sabrina. Smash the like, y'all. Thank you so much. Greetings, Bad Cookies. Waiting on that heifer with cheese, Julio? Half baked. That's what I was thinking, waiting for the stream to start. What's going on? Joe OWS says, quiet on the set, roll opening credits and action. Hey, I'm a director, LOL. Shout out to everybody's in a good mood tonight. What's going on? Noep says, it's about to go down, LOL. What's going on? Sean says, yo. Shout out to Jig Grinder says, Merry Christmas. Greetings, Delthea, who's a Sabby member, says, happy holidays. What's going on? Mark says, Sabby. Shout out to Gamer says, hello. Greetings, James Green says, yay, she's on. I am here. Shout out to Nikki's World says, hello, everyone. What's going on? Make sure I don't skip. Battle Axe says, hello, Miss Sabby. Shout out to Notori, sends lots of love. Greetings, Damon. Damon Reeves says, positive vibes to all my Sabby peeps. Shout out to Just making sure I'm not jumping over. A CBC voter says, happy Tuesday, Sabby Sabs. Greetings, Les says, blue is a great color on you, Sabby. Thank you. It's interesting. My favorite color is actually pink, but I do have a lot of blues. And greetings, Renee says, good evening from Denmark, everyone. Shout out to the international peeps in the house. I'm always surprised, like the number of people in other countries that catch the show. Greetings, JK Engineering and Architecture. Respect Empress Sabby. Hail from Jamaica. Jamaica's got a bobsled team. Cool runnings. All right, I'm in a silly mood tonight as well. All right, guys, let's go ahead and give a shout out to Sabby patrons, and then we'll go ahead and jump right in. We will do call in tonight, so don't miss that. There's so much to discuss. Thank you to everyone who is a Sabby patron. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories: Ultimate, Sabinators. Don't forget about those Sabsters. There's also Sabbies, and of course, members. All of their names are listed here. You can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker. Thank you guys so much for holding down the fort. Thank you. All righty, guys. A lot happened yesterday. And yes, yesterday was Christmas. And I could not believe on Christmas Day, there was still war, right? But it has escalated to another level. And we're going to get into that tonight. So let's go ahead and share that beautiful thumbnail there. Tonight, we are discussing Cornel West versus Piers Morgan. Piers Morgan has been taking a beating the past couple of weeks. Oh, my God. We're also going to discuss Michael Rapaport MOCKS SHAUN King. MOCKS SHAUN King. Can't talk tonight. Interesting story there. Yes, SHAUN King is back in the news again. We're also going to discuss Iran military advisor hit. You'll see there's a picture of Netanyahu behind him, behind Saeed. And we're also going to discuss Xi Jinping gives a stern warning to Joe Biden. Everything is happening at once, or at least it seems that way, right? It's not just Russia and Ukraine. It's not just Israel and Gaza. It's also now China and the United States. So there's a lot happening under Joe Biden's presidency. Oh, my God. So let's get started with the first story. Yesterday, believe it or not, Israel actually killed an Iranian top commander. This is a huge story. His name is Saeed. Now, he was not killed in Iran. He was actually killed in Syria. And Iran is already warning Israel for a countdown. So this war between Israel and Gaza has now escalated to a completely different level. This is what I think a lot of us were afraid of, which is why, we're calling for ceasefire, not just because of the casualties in Gaza, but also because this idea of a greater Israel, which Netanyahu does want, also could put other Arab countries that surround Israel at risk. And of course, Iran is one of those countries that Israel has been just itching to hit for quite some time. Let's go ahead and get started. This news broke yesterday. Again, Israel airstrike kills a senior Iranian official in Syria. We're going to go ahead and get into this from Al Jazeera.
And returning to some breaking news now, an Israeli airstrike outside the Syrian capital Damascus has killed a senior member of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. Sardar Sayed Razi Musavi was one of the top commanders of the IRGC. Let's get more on this from our correspondent Ali Hashim. He is joining us from Nakura in southern Lebanon. Firstly, Ali, what more are you hearing about this strike?
Well, just afternoon today, there was an Israeli airstrike on a target near the Al Zainabiyya neighborhood to the south of Damascus. Later on, we understood that Sayyid Razi al-Musawi, who is also known as Sayyid Razi, was the target of this Israeli attack. As a matter of fact, Sayyid Razi al-Musawi is one of the oldest IRGC commanders in Syria and Lebanon. He's been functioning.
Okay, let's just pause here for a second, just in case anyone had any doubts. So Sayed was targeted. This was not just an airstrike and he just happened to, be a part of it. He was a direct target.
In this area since the 80s, so since the beginning of the Islamic Revolution. He and several other IRGC commanders came to this region, and later on he became so close to the slain Quds commander, IRGC commander Qasim Soleimani, who was also assassinated 3 years ago in Baghdad. So according to our sources, Razi al-Musawi was target to several assassination attempts by Israel. However, this was the time when the assassination attempt succeeded. The Israelis accuse him of being an instrumental figure within the network of arms smuggling from Iran to Syria, to Iraq, to Syria, and to end with Hezbollah in Lebanon, and also as a very influential within the axis, what Iran calls the so-called axis of resistance. And of course, we'll hear more maybe in the coming days about whether there is also another role that isn't really exposed, even, especially with respect to relations with the Palestinian factions and the Hamas and Islamic Jihad.
He certainly sounds.
Pause here for just a second. So let's be clear here. Israel knows that Iran is not going to let this just slide by. Obviously, they're going to attempt to respond. If Iran responds to Israel, then the next steps that I see taking place is Israel, again, pushing the United States for more weapons, more arms, and also trying to convince the United States in some way, shape, or form to push back, or even if they have to get involved militarily against Iran. This is exactly what we did not want to happen. Listen, do not sleep on Iran. They have very powerful weapons. The last thing that you want to happen is for the US government to be involved in any type of war with Iran. This is not a good idea. This is not good. But he was a direct target. They went directly after him. Now, I don't know. I have not seen any evidence or proof that he has supplied arms to Gaza. I have not seen that. I do know that some of this has something to do with also the Yemeni Houthis that have been, blocking part of the Red Sea. They decided to intervene there and block those weapons that were going into Israel. They also believe that Iran is complicit with that as well. Iran has denied that. But make no mistakes, ladies and gentlemen, this is not okay. We should not be cheering for this because this is now escalated to another level. And then I will also I want to also touch on the blackout that also happened yesterday in Israel, and this idea of a cyber attack that some people are claiming happened. I'm going to tell you how this is all connected.
Sounds very high profile, and Israel has a history of carrying out strikes in Syria, doesn't it, Ali?
Yes, indeed. There were several Israeli airstrikes in Syria in the past. Of course, over the past years, there were many. Yeah. But in the context of the war on Gaza, there were several Israeli airstrikes, mainly targeting the airport in Damascus and the airport in Aleppo. However, a couple of weeks ago, or even maybe 20 days ago, there was an assassination of 2 Iranian IRGC officers, senior officers in Syria. The Iranians vowed to revenge then when the news came out. So there is targeting, and the Israelis, of course, have never came out and claimed responsibility clearly. However, they always hint to their role in such attacks.
Ali, thank you very much for that. That is Ali Hashim with what we know so far. He's live in Nakura in southern Lebanon.
Okay. So again, on Christmas Day, right? Now I want to take you to something that Dan Cohen said, because I think this is really interesting. Dan Cohen said 2 days ago, the Wall Street Journal reported that in the days following October 7, Israel planned to carry out a preemptive strike on Hezbollah, claiming that it was preparing a massive cross-border attack. But the Biden administration deemed Israeli intelligence unreliable and told Netanyahu to back off. Today, Israel assassinated Iran's top general in Syria, inviting an Iranian response, which will serve as a pretext for Israel to again attempt to pressure the United States into fighting Hezbollah and Iran on its behalf. This is what I was warning people about. Will the Biden administration take the bait and risk escalating into a regional and even world war? If the United States government takes this bait, we could possibly be looking at getting closer and closer towards World War III. Because let's be clear, if the US government decides to attack Iran, do you think that the other Arab countries are not going to try to intervene in some way, shape, or form? You think that Jordan and Egypt, let alone Saudi Arabia, because Saudi Arabia is already not on the best terms with the United States like it used to be. Do you think they're just going to sit back and watch their neighbor possibly get destroyed or slaughtered? You think they're going to let the US government try to do to Iran what Israel was doing to Gaza? And make no mistake, this would not be a for sure win for the United States government. It would not be a for sure win for Israel. Iran has massive weapon power. They can destroy us. I want to be very clear. They can destroy us. So this whole talk that you hear a lot of people say, we're the US, we're the best. No one can beat us. No, other countries can. So Israel knows exactly what it was doing by going after this attack. By the way, from what I understand, he was on vacation in Syria. On Christmas Day. But, of course, Iran has responded. They are telling Israel to prepare for a countdown. Now, listen to this. This is in multiple outlets, but even in the Times of Israel also reported this. Tel Aviv faces a tough countdown. Iran warns after senior IRGC officer is killed. Ladies and gentlemen, buckle up for this one. Iran's foreign minister warns that Tel Aviv faces a tough countdown after a senior officer in the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps was killed Monday in an alleged Israeli airstrike in the Syrian capital of Damascus. In a tweet, Hossein claims General Razi fought bravely for many years to ensure the security of Iran and the region. Mousavi was responsible. Mousavi and Razi is the same person, by the way. Mousavi was responsible for coordinating the military alliance between Iran and Syria and was believed by Israel to be heavily involved in Tehran's efforts to supply weapons to terror proxies in the area, including Lebanon's Hezbollah terror group. Hezbollah says it regards the killing as a flagrant and shameless violation, which is off limits, according to, sorry, that just did something on its own. According to Iran's state-owned press TV. So they are now telling Israel to prepare for a countdown, which means that Iran could possibly now strike Israel. And then, of course, Israel will respond to Iran. And now we would have multiple conflicts in the Middle East at the same time. Multiple. Israel and Gaza. By the way, Israel was still attacking Gaza on Christmas Day. Still on Christmas Day. And Netanyahu had the audacity to deliver a Merry Christmas speech. I want to get into this clip here from Al Jazeera, where it says that Israel is certainly to pay for killing senior general. So they are already putting the message out there to Israel that they are not going to let them get away with this. But this is exactly what Israel wanted to happen. You guys have to understand they didn't do this for shits and giggles. They knew that Iran would respond, thus escalating more conflicts in the Middle East. And then Israel would then in turn go back to the United States, beg for more arms, and also try to convince the US to get involved in another conflict. We are going into 2024 presidential election. The way that Joe Biden chooses to respond to this could make or break his candidacy. I would argue his candidacy is already broken anyway. But just imagine adding another conflict to his belt.
Iran has warned that Israel will pay after a senior member of its Revolutionary Guard was killed in an Israeli airstrike in Syria. Razi Mousavi was killed in the Zainabiyah area in the suburbs of the Syrian capital Damascus. He was considered one of the closest IRGC commanders to General Qasem Soleimani, the former Al-Quds leader who was killed in a US drone attack. Let's get more on this from Ali Hashim. He's joining us live from Nakura in southern Lebanon, a very high-profile figure, Ali. What more are you hearing about the strike?
Well, according to our sources, Razi al-Mousawi came to his Zainabiyah residence after meeting the Iranian ambassador in Damascus. Just a few minutes after his arrival, 3 missiles hit his residence and he was killed immediately. Some of his escorts, his entourage, were injured. But the fact is that Razi al-Mousawi, according to our sources, was subject to 2 assassination attempts during the past years. He was an instrumental figure within the Quds force that was led before by Qasem Soleimani and now by Ismail Qaani, which is part of the IRGC, the Iranian IRGC. He was the guy responsible for transporting and transferring weapons from Iran to Iraq, to Syria, to Lebanon, also to the Palestinian factions. And the fact that all the fingers are towards Israel regarding this assassination and the accusations towards Israel puts this whole situation within the context of the war on Gaza, especially with the IRGC being accused by the Israelis of fueling tension from Iraq to Yemen to Lebanon to Syria. So this is part of this context that we might be talking about or we might be tackling. However, the fact is, Razi al-Mousawi was seen also as someone who is kind of a shadow commander in Syria and in Lebanon too. He's been in this region since the 80s and he helped in putting the foundation for the Iranian influence and mainly the IRGC influence within these countries. Therefore, he enjoys very good relations with Hezbollah in Lebanon. He enjoys very good relations also with the Syrian government and with, of course, the Iraqis and the Palestinians.
And Ali, Israel has a history of carrying out strikes in Syria. They've only increased since the war on Gaza began. Iran is saying Israel is going to pay for this latest aggression.
Yep. And this is another point that I've brought up as well since this conflict started October 7th, is that Israel has also been bombing Syria and Lebanon as well, not just Gaza.
Well, given the fact that this assassination is taking place within the context of the war that's going on, and given the fact also that the Lebanese front is already in a situation where it's an operation zone, we can see what's happening from Yemen or from Syria, or the Iraqi factions attacking the American bases there. So it seems there is quite a very slight margin for the Iranians to maneuver within in order to retaliate. So the retaliation that might happen, and we don't know if this is going to happen anytime soon, would be part of this whole context. It's not going to be outside this context.
So one thing I will say is that if Iran does retaliate, which they probably will, it will probably be when Israel least expects it, right? Just like they attacked Said on Christmas Day, a couple of minutes after he arrived in Syria. So probably when he least expected it. But this did not start with October 7th. I want to take you back to a time where Netanyahu actually talked about the fact that he considered Iran to be a threat. And he talked about this idea of a greater Israel, who he wanted to weed out and who he wanted to keep. Now, this clip is also from Al Jazeera. This is actually 3 months ago. Listen to this.
A few years ago, I stood here with a red marker to show the curse, a great curse, the curse of a nuclear Iran. But today I bring this marker to show a great blessing.
Pause here for a second. He considers Iran to be a curse because they have, he said, the nuclear Iran. Apparently they have nuclear weapons, but Israel does too. So it seems like to me, Israel feels that they're the only country in the Middle East that should have nuclear weapons. Remember what Rick Sterling said when he came onto the show about what JFK wanted. John F. Kennedy did not want Israel to have nuclear weapons. And this is something more people need to talk about. He was very much afraid that if they did have nuclear weapons, they would do what they're doing right now to Gaza. So when it comes to another country, though, Netanyahu doesn't think it's okay for any other country to have these weapons in the Middle East.
The blessing of a new Middle East between Israel, Saudi Arabia, and our other neighbors. We will not only bring down barriers between Israel and our neighbors, we'll build a new corridor of peace and prosperity that connects Asia through the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Israel, to Europe.
That's the Silk Road. So you see, when I told you guys this was all, a lot of this is about resources. That's what he wants to do. So if they expand Israel, this idea of a greater Israel, right? That means that Gaza will no longer belong to the Palestinian people. The plan is to get those people out. Also, the people in the West Bank too. They want to get those people out, push them into countries like Lebanon or Egypt, have them live in refugee camps there. So they'll just be refugees somewhere else. And for Israel to take over that land, to expand and to create the Silk Road from Europe all the way through Israel.
This is an extraordinary change, a monumental change, another pivot of history. But I also believe that we must not give the Palestinians a veto over new peace treaties with Arab states. Sanctions must be snapped back. And above all, Iran must face a credible nuclear threat.
See? So again, that was always the plan. This is what I want people to understand. This is not just because of October 7th. This was always the plan. He didn't want them there either. Now, something else happened yesterday, too. There was a blackout in Israel, and some people thought that this was probably connected to the assassination of the Iranian commander. But they're actually saying that's not true. It says Israel power firm denies cyber attack claims after reports of a major blackout. It goes on to say Israel on Monday found itself grappling with widespread power outages and internet blackouts after at least 2 production units of a major power company collapsed. The blackout fueled speculations that it might have something to do with the ongoing war in Gaza and a potential cyber attack by Iran. However, Meir Spiegler, the CEO of Israel Electric Corporation, rubbished these claims without providing any cause for the collapse of the units. Spiegler instead said the cause of the blackout is not known yet. Israel's Channel 11 reported that the initial outage hit 150,000 people throughout the country. However, most of them were reconnected with power grids within hours, with just 34,000 people remaining disconnected. What caused the blackout? According to local media reports, the IEC said that the alternative units were put into operation as soon as the 2 units collapsed. This break caused load shedding that caused power outages in a number of locations across the country. Alternative Alternative production units went into operation and electricity returned to most of the outages. That's according to the IEC. So just FYI, because I know people were asking questions about that, if that were connected. They have said that is not connected. So just wanted to make sure I added that there. But the point to be made is this. This is not good. The last thing we want is for Iran to feel the need to retaliate, which they do right now, and you really can't blame them for feeling that way. But that's the last thing that we need to happen right now. The way that I see it, I just feel like Israel is just trying to wage war in the entire Middle East. I don't think this is just about Gaza. I think they continue to want to do what Netanyahu said in front of the UN. They want to take part of Lebanon. They want to take part of Syria, probably the part of Syria that has the oil. They want to take part of Egypt. They want to expand the greater Israel. And in order for them to do that, the people who are there would have to be displaced. They would not be able to stay there. And that's part of the reason why they want to take over Gaza. They're going to lie to you and say they don't, but they do. This was always a part of the plan. If you go back and you actually read information about Zionism from the very get-go, the plan was to create the greater Israel. So we can't sit here and just say it's because of October 7th. We also have to address the history and everything that has led up to October 7th. And also, we have to listen to the things that Netanyahu has said blatantly in interviews, telling you this is what they want. And it's funny to me that he can say this blatantly in interviews and people will still deny it. Crazy times we're living in, folks. Let me go to some of the comments in the chat. Thank you for the super chat. P. Smith says, Keith McHenry is food, not bombs. Anarchist handbook. Oh, thank you. I didn't realize that. What's up, Keith? Bad Cookie said, Sabby Sabs, Joe Biden has already stated if Iran gets involved even a little, we will go to war with Iran. And that would be a disaster. Could you guys imagine? That would be an absolute disaster. Sean says, insomnia be damned. I got Sabby and Co. for company here in Scotland. Solidarity. Hello from Scotland. Crazy stuff, man. This is just crazy. I can't. I can't. It's wild. Sebastian said, I ain't fighting this war. Thank you for this as well, Sean. This does not end well for Israel. My Jewish friends feel unsafe, but don't seem to make the link that every day Israel makes them so. A single secular state equals only solution left, but Bibi has to go. That's a really good point that you brought up there, Sean, because the more Israel attacks, the worse it actually makes things for Jewish people. Like, it's just, I've said this before. I don't think what Israel's doing is making Jewish people safe. We're going to move on to the next story. Shaun King. He's back in the news, believe it or not. For those who are not aware, let me just show you his picture. Shaun King, also known as Talcum X. People have all kinds of nicknames for him. We'll get into that in a second. Activist, mainly known for speaking out against police brutality. He started a PAC. He tried to raise money for families that had family members that were killed from police brutality. And he has received a lot of backlash over the years, obviously. One of them being this one, because he's back into the news again. Shaun King under fire after his PAC paid $40,000 for a guard dog. So one of the things that Shaun King has been criticized for is taking PAC money and using it for personal expenses. Tamir Rice's mother actually spoke out publicly against Shaun King and said that he actually took their story and publicized it in such a way that she did not actually give him permission to do. She also called him a white man. We'll get into all of this. But there have been family members that were not happy with Shaun King, and they felt like along the way, he has basically just profited off of police brutality killings. And I agree to that. He took this money and used it for personal use. Controversial activist Shaun King is facing scrutiny after his political action committee reportedly paid over $40,000 to a California breeder for a guard dog. However, he apparently returned the pooch because it had too much energy. King announced via Facebook that he welcomed a mastiff named Mars, which he called a new member of the King family. His post is no longer publicly accessible. The FEC records show that the Grassroots Law PAC made a pair of payments to Potrero Performance's dogs, including a $10,000 contractor deposit. That was on December 6th. 2 months later, the PAC, which claims to end oppressive policing, incarceration, and injustice, paid Potrero another $30,650. There were also accusations against Shaun King saying that he had like $1 million house. Like, obviously, he found a subject, a sad subject, that he actually was able to profit off of. But when you have a PAC, you don't take PAC money for a certain cause and use it for personal expenses. And every time that Shaun King has been called out for his behavior, he will deactivate his accounts on Twitter. Don't know about Facebook. I'm not on Facebook as much, but on Twitter, he has done this multiple times, right? Every time he's called out for spending money in a way that he is not supposed to. Still, according to the Free Beacon, Mars was alleged to serve double duty, providing alertness and protection to the PAC and serving as a family pet. On Potrero's Instagram, a since deleted post from earlier this month reportedly showed the dog at an American Kennel Club competition where it won Best in Show. With the breeder captioning the post, "Mars has a little too much energy to be a family dog, so he came back." So again, notice it said that post was deleted. This is something that he was kind of known for doing. The $40,000 plus that Grassroots Law PAC allegedly spent on the dog is nearly equal to the $56,000 in contributions it made to a non-federal political candidates in 2021, as detailed by the Free Beacon. The luxury dog expense may not be illegal for a PAC, but it shows little respect for King's donors. Scott Walker, a think tank Capital Research Center member, told the publication. King, who also lives in a lavish lakefront home in New Jersey, has raised the ire of many people over his fundraising efforts and financial dealings. He's been accused of soliciting money in the name of 12-year-old police shooting victim Tamir Rice without his mother's permission. That was the one I was telling you about. "I don't understand how you sleep at night," Samaria Rice wrote on Instagram last year. In 2019, King also gave critics an unfettered look at his finances, breaking down the $34.5 million he raised since the Black Lives Matter movement began through a team of experts called the Shaun King Financial Review Board. The review board claimed it found absolutely no evidence of inappropriateness from its founder. Okay, but yeah, I mean, you're on his board. He chose you. So obviously they're not going to speak ill of him, right? "We searched and we asked," added the board at the time. "No single family, charity cause, or campaign said Shaun was ever compensated directly or indirectly for his online fundraising." But one of the issues that people had is that Shaun King obviously took PAC money and used it for personal expenses, which he should not have done. And then there was this claim. There was also the claim that Shaun King was pretending to be a black man and he actually was white. I kid you not. Even CNN talked about it. There have been many claims against Shaun King. This one is the one where I think more people called him Talcum X because of this.
I have tremendous respect for the work that he's done. But when if you hold yourself up to something that is not what you claim to be, then that's a problem if you're a leader. Now, I'm not saying that he's doing that, but that is what's in question now, and that's why this story is newsworthy. Here's what he said to me. So I asked him about it because there are all these claims about him, whether he's black, white, biracial, right, or whether was there a civil a hate crime that happened to him back in 1995. And I said to him last night, I said, what would you like to convey? And he said, number one, this attack isn't about me so much, but about derailing Black Lives Matter and the movement against police brutality. And he said, number two, the reports are all lies. I tried hard to debunk them, and others have said, that they are lies as well. And then he said, I will speak soon. And I asked him specifically, I said, you know, are you legally black? Are you legally white? Or are you biracial? Are you black or white? He says, I am biracial. And I said, is that what it is on your birth certificate? He did not answer. So,
and just to be clear here, it doesn't, like, to me, like, if you're, look, I don't care what color you are, if you want to advocate for, you know, against police brutality, if you want to advocate for the Black community, it doesn't matter to me if you're Black, biracial, white, etc. But I think the problem with Shaun King is that it's been very clear that Shaun King is not who he said he was. You shouldn't have to lie about who you are. Whatever it is on his birth certificate, I don't know. But I mean, this goes back to, what was the woman's name? Rachel Dolezal, right? Like, I had no issue with the fact that she wanted to advocate for the Black community, but I did have a problem with the fact that she was lying to people for all these years, saying that she was Black and she wasn't. So it's those kind of things.
And that's a tough part, because no one can defend you like you can defend yourself, right? And it's not our role to defend him. I know people are upset saying, why does it matter? Why does it matter? It mattered for Rachel Dolezal, who was excoriated in the media because people said, you know,
who had to leave her post at the NAACP,
and who did great work for the NAACP, raised thousands of dollars, helped a lot of people. Shaun King has done the same thing, and it's a little bit odd to many people because the reaction is different among some, because maybe he's a part of the Black Lives Matter movement, but also women are saying it's sexist because why didn't you not accept Rachel Dolezal, but you're accepting Shaun King?
I think this is also just bubbling up, so we'll see where it goes. I do want to read this to our viewers, though, because this is what Shaun King's wife, Ray, posted on Facebook today. She wrote, regarding his race, he has never lied, not once. His story is beautifully difficult and painful, and I've actually encouraged him to tell it publicly because it's a unique expression of this country's sordid and ridiculous history with race. But it's his story to tell on his own terms when he is ready to tell it out of respect for his mother.
Okay.
There could be so much more
let me tell you that.
Here.
So this is...
So I didn't even agree with what she said there about being more at play. I didn't think there was more at play, regardless of whatever his story is in the past. The thing is this: Shaun King found a way to take a subject and to profit off of it handsomely. Okay. He saw a subject that was it was trending at that point in time, police brutality, whether it was Tamir Rice, whether it was George Floyd, etc. Michael Brown. He saw a topic that was trending. He found a way to make a profit. You have to remember, Shaun King came from TYT. Some people don't know that, but if you look it up, you'll see Shaun King came from TYT. So he was another person that came from that network and found a way that he could profit more. So one of the issues that I had with Shaun King is that I felt like he was profiting off of police brutality deaths. And he was. This guy is rich. He got rich off of this. It's not like he was just some beat street reporter. Like, he got rich off of it, had a PAC, created a PAC for it, then started taking PAC money to use it for personal expenses, had like $1 million home. And obviously, if you're trying to advocate for those issues, a lot of these family members that Shaun King said he spoke to said they didn't see any of that money in return. And he was supposed to be helping them. It is what it is. I don't care about the sob story, man. I don't need to hear a story about your past. I don't need to hear about all that. The thing is, you found a way to profit off of it, and you lied about who you were.
From the very beginning, I've known that this is probably the case, but I can't tell his story for him. I can only report the facts. So, and as I said to him, and I won't tell you what his response was, but I sent him a text this morning, and I said, and this is a very honest moment that I didn't practice. Let me see if I can find my text to him. I said, I say that because I was texting him this morning to tell him that I appreciate him considering coming on and giving me the statement for last night. And I say that because I empathize with you. I said, I don't care what color you are. I said, my mom is mixed. I grew up in a small racist town. My mom had an affair with my dad, who was not her husband, and I am the product of that relationship. People called me a bastard. They called me the N-word. They called me high yellow, half white, blah, 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 on and on. And I said, so peace to you. I understand that. So it doesn't mean that the person who is on your birth certificate is necessarily your father. But I can't tell that story for him. It's up to him to tell that story. If that is whatever the case may be.
Which we don't know.
And it's nothing to be ashamed of, because it happens to a lot of people. I wrote about it in a book, and it was very liberating for not only me, but for my entire family.
So take us back to 1990.
This was Don Lemon. So at this point in time, this was Don Lemon trying to run cover for Shaun King, because CNN, like, they promoted him. A lot of like liberal networks at that point in time did. They promoted him. They gave him shout outs. They brought him on. So this is Don trying to say, I can't really, speak for those people, who went through that at that time. Listen, you don't see a grift in front of you. You don't see an obvious grift.
97, right? He's 15 years old. He's in school. He's talked about this multiple times and has witnesses who point to him being attacked, whether it was by a group or by a singular person being attacked. His wife says she was there for the surgeries that he had to endure after he was beaten. Another person reportedly saw the assault. The fact is, does it matter if he's black or not? If
matter.
He was attacked for being perceived to be.
That's not the point. The point is that he said it was a hate crime, one of Kentucky's first hate crimes. The officer, the detective who investigated it said that's not so.
You heard that, right? So that was one of the claims that Shaun King had, is that he was the victim of a hate crime. But this has been debunked multiple, who is this guy, right? So who was Shaun King? And every now and then he'll appear again in the spotlight, in the media, in the news. Something else happens with him. He'll get embarrassed and then he'll deactivate his Twitter account over and over. He's done this multiple times. Instead of just keeping it real with people, telling people who you are, and just keeping it real.
The police report doesn't show it as a hate crime. So I think that's why people are so concerned about it. Now, his family did tell us, CNN Tonight, that it was racially motivated, they believe, because he was white and dating a black woman who is now his wife. So was it a racist attack according to them? Yes. Was it a hate crime? The evidence doesn't seem to point that way.
Oh, man. So I brought up those two examples, the claim that Shaun King is actually white and the example of him using PAC money to pay for personal expenses, because Shaun King is in the news again. Now, this time, a different situation. And Michael Rapaport, Mr. Big Mouth himself on Twitter with his crazy videos, has some things to say about Shaun King. Because now it appears that Shaun King apparently has been banned from Instagram over Israel-Gaza post. Let's get into it straight from the Daily Beast. Oh my God. Shaun King claims Instagram banned him over Israel-Gaza post. So this story broke earlier this morning. Controversial activist Shaun King claimed Instagram removed his profile on Monday because his pro-Palestinian post. King, an anti-racist activist and writer with a string of failed projects behind him, posted a video on a friend's Instagram account Sunday, thanking his 6 million followers for their support since his profile was taken down. I'm grateful. I'm safe. And I've been through much harder times than being banned on Instagram. King then pivoted to criticism of Meta, saying the company had decided to stand in the way of those of us who are fighting for human rights and dignity of Palestinians. Frustrated that Instagram has banned me for fighting for Palestine and speaking up for the human rights and dignity of Palestinians. But I refuse to betray my values and principles by staying quiet or silent, about this genocide and war crimes in Gaza and the West Bank, he said in the caption. So let's talk about this and we'll get back to it. So I, for one, am against censorship. You guys know how I feel about that. I don't agree with people being removed from TikTok is removing people right now. They removed Glenn Greenwald. They removed Lee Camp. They removed me, but I appealed and then they said it was an error. So I don't know what that was about. It's funny. I really post on TikTok anyway. Small account as well. But there have been people being removed from these platforms because of their stances in reference to Israel and Gaza, more so the pro-Palestinian voices. Twitter has been suppressing those voices, Twitter X, whatever you want to call it today. But because it's Shaun King, sometimes it's just hard to believe it. Because it's like, are you telling the truth this time, Shaun? Like, that's the thing. Like, are you telling the truth this time, Shaun? But maybe let's say he is telling the truth. Because what some people are pointing out is that Shaun also is not favorable among the Palestinian community because they also felt like he was using them for a grift. That being said, though, does he deserve the right to be censored? Let's continue here. It says the activist added in the video that he had attorneys and other people involved and would like to return to the platform, but not if that means compromising my values, speaking up for Palestinians. Meta did not immediately respond to a request for comment from the Daily Beast, but a spokesperson told the New York Post that King's account was disabled due to multiple instances of praise for designated entities in violation of our policies. His Facebook profile remains active. So this is the part I want you to look at right here. His Facebook profile remains active because Facebook owns Instagram. Meta is now Facebook. Meta is also Instagram. So they're usually like all together here. So why would they remove him from Instagram, but not remove him from Facebook if he has those same posts? And that could be coming. I don't know. That could be coming. But a little weird there. They tend to give a vague reason, though, by the way. That reason that they stated there, I believe that Instagram probably said that. It sounds like something they would say and not tell you exactly what you posted that was problematic to them. The international nonprofit Human Rights Watch recently criticized Meta for what it called systemic censorship of content related to the Israel-Gaza war, saying the social media giant displayed a pattern of undue removal and suppression of protected speech, including peaceful expression in support of Palestine and public debate about Palestinian human rights. The nonprofit named the suspension or removal of accounts as one of Meta's censorship tools. King, who came to prominence as a commentator during the Black Lives Matter movement, previously started and then suddenly shuttered a social justice organization called Justice Together. He then crowdfunded a site called the North Star, a proposed reboot of an old abolitionist newspaper, which the Daily Beast previously reported failed to meet its promises to donors. Responses in the comments under King's video were mixed. Some users called for an Instagram boycott. Others questioned King's intentions. So once again, we have this issue with Shaun King where people are questioning his motive. It goes on to say he is a grifter. He needs to stay off these apps, one user wrote. Now, I don't necessarily agree that someone should be removed from the applications. And I say this because you have to be careful with censorship. I remember when people were cheering when Alex Jones was removed. They were cheering when Donald Trump was removed. But then that censorship started to spread to the left. Right now, Heartland's Media is in danger of losing their channel. If you don't follow Heartland's Media on X, please follow them and you will see this is probably their pinned tweet right now. They have received 3 copyright strikes. If this is not resolved, if YouTube does not fix this by January 1st, Heartland's Media will lose their channel. And I have to give a shout out here to Kit, because for people who don't know, Heartland's Media was one of the very first channels that had me on their show. This is almost 3 years ago. One of the very first ones. Kid has helped a lot of people in this space. And so to see that they're trying to take down Heartland's Media, it's very sad. It hurts my heart. It really does. So we have to be careful when you cheer on some type of censorship. I may not like Shaun King as a person. I may not like some of the things that Shaun King has done. I don't like the fact that Shaun King has basically grifted off police brutality pain, and he has taken that money and used it for other circumstances than what he said he was going to use it for. I don't like any of that. But does that mean that he should be removed from the platforms? Michael Rapaport thinks so. Mr. Big Mouth himself, he says, I guarantee you Shaun King had many, many, many chances to change his propaganda, Hamas-loving ways on IG. If you can't do the time, don't do the crime. Listen to this, guys. Has he received enough attention yet?
In regards to Talcum X, aka Shaun King, getting kicked off of Instagram, all I have to say is ha, 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 ha. There was a great song from the 70s and it went like this: don't do the crime if you can't do the time. No, don't do it. Listen, this guy's pumping all kinds of bullshit, fake news, fake captions, Looney Tune, whack job, weirdo stuff about how he had something to do with freeing the hostages. I guarantee you, as somebody who has firsthand experience being suspended, I've been suspended so many times right here on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok.
So this is the part that's interesting. Michael Rapaport is telling you that he has been suspended multiple times, but here he is cheering on someone else being suspended. So it is what it is, folks. Either you're against censorship or you're for censorship. I don't like this whole I'm against censorship for this person, but not for that person. Let's go back a little bit.
Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, you get warnings, you read the rules, you have conversations, you try to pull this string, that string. This isn't a park. This isn't a free-for-all. It's social media. These are privately owned companies. If you don't know, you don't follow the rules, you get kicked off. Okay? He thought was sweet. Ain't sweet. Now you're off Instagram. Also, what does Shaun King do for a living? What is his day job? How does he make money? How does he make money? That's beside the point. You're off. Good. And other people have been kicked off. Black people, Jewish people, Puerto Rican people, Chinese people, people from this country, that country, from all over the world. You don't follow the rules, you get kicked off. If you can't do the time, don't do the crime. Yeah, I don't do it, but it's funny. Ha, you ha, 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 you you. Bye.
There's just so many things, so many things wrong with what he said there. Like, again, like he's looking at this as though number one is pro-Palestinian content, which Michael has a problem with. Number two, there's also the fact that it's Shaun King, who Michael also has a problem with. But for me, I'm this type of person where I have a problem with Shaun King, but I also have a problem with censorship. So I don't agree with Shaun King being removed. Michael can't seem to remove himself from his dislike of Shaun King and the pro-Palestinian movements and censorship. So that's a big part of the problem. There is something that he said here I want to call out for just a second. I'm sorry you have to hear this again.
Social media. These are privately owned companies. If you don't know, you don't follow the rules, you get kicked off. Okay? He thought was sweet. Ain't sweet. Now you're off Instagram. Also, what does Shaun King do for a living? What is his day job?
Michael, what is Michael doing for a living? Like, what is Michael doing these days? Because I haven't seen Michael in too many movies. Michael, I haven't seen you in too many shows. Recently, I haven't seen Michael in a minute, okay? Michael, what are you doing besides yelling on Twitter every day with the camera so close up to your face like it's a 1990s MTV, like old school, like rap video? Oh, I call the 90s old school. Damn. But what are you doing, Michael? Two, this comment that he made, if you can't follow the rules, I have to push back on that because the rules can change at any time. These platforms have been known to remove people for work and content that was done before they changed their policies. For example, YouTube changes their policy every year. Did you know that? Every year I get an email from YouTube that says, we have updated our policy. We've updated our community guidelines. Sometimes they give more leeway to certain content, but usually they're trying to suppress more content. So the rules can change at any time. Also, just because you follow the rules doesn't mean they won't remove you. All they have to do is disagree with the narrative. They disagree with the narrative. So a lot of the pro-Palestinian content, particularly on Instagram and Facebook, they're either heavily suppressing, they are shadow banning these people, these accounts, or they're just flat out removing them. Some of these people have done nothing wrong other than the fact that they are not out there cheerleading for the state of Israel. This can happen to Michael again. The rules can change at any time. That's the thing. So we have to push back on censorship. We have to stand against censorship. I just told you about what happened to Hardlin's Media. This can happen to anyone. But Michael just wants to cry.
How does he make money? How does he make money? That's beside the point. You're off. Good. And other people have been kicked off. Black people, Jewish people, Puerto Rican people, Chinese people, people from this country, that country, from all over the world. You don't follow the rules, you get kicked off. If you can't do the time, don't do the crime. Yeah, don't do it, but it's funny. Ha, you ha, 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 you you. Bye.
So what I want you to understand again is that I do not agree with the censorship. We have to learn how to separate ourselves from the fact that we just don't like someone or we don't like what they've done versus what is happening to them right now when it comes to censorship. But Michael don't have it all together. I want to show you what Michael said on Christmas. Listen to this. There's no Christmas in Gaza. Ho, ho, Hamas. He put a picture here of a white Santa Claus and a black Santa Claus, right? Listen to this. I really think there's something wrong with Michael.
Ho, ho, ho. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas from Israel. Anybody who's celebrating. Unfortunately, there ain't going to be no Christmas in the Gaza Strip. Santa Claus can't land his sled in Gaza. You think Rudolph, Dancer, and Prancer are going to let Santa Claus land his sled? And that that's been ran into the ground by Hamas. No, Hamas doesn't celebrate Christmas. Hamas doesn't celebrate Valentine's Day, Pride Week. Doesn't do any of that. God forbid Santa was to land his sleigh in the Gaza Strip.
I didn't realize Valentine's Day celebration was this big of a deal, but okay.
Hamas would rob him, possibly rape him. There's no Christmas in Gaza. Sorry. It's sad, but like I said, there's no Valentine's Day, there's no Easter, there's nothing. There is nothing fun in the Gaza Strip because Hamas runs the Gaza Strip. Ho, ho, Hamas. You ruin everything, you.
I really think there is something wrong with Michael. Like, I really do. I really think there is something not right with Mike. And I've seen this guy before in multiple movies, like TV shows, like throughout the 90s. He was in Higher Learning. Actually, it's pretty interesting because in Higher Learning, he played a white supremacist. Ho, ho, ho. Ho, ho, ho to that. So it's just, there's something off about Michael. You know, at first I just thought Michael maybe just wanted some attention. Maybe he felt like he wasn't getting enough attention, or maybe he just wasn't paying attention to the story, to the narrative, etc. But as time has gone by, I think there is something wrong with Michael. I really do. Strange guy. But Shaun King has been banned from Instagram again. You don't got to like Shaun King. You ain't got to appreciate Shaun King. But the censorship is a problem, especially for the pro-Palestinian voices. A lot of these outlets are coming after those voices and anyone that has a narrative that is different from the State Department, right? So we got to be careful. You can't be cheering on censorship, whether you like the person or not. That's how I look at it. Let me go to some of the comments here. Saul said, saw some shit about Tamir Rice. Mom says he's fundraised off of her dead son and gave her $60K out of $4 million. Tia says, Lemon, there are many black people who are mixed and didn't screw people over. Don't make excuses for that guy. Bad Cookie said, very true, Sabby. And when he was getting suspended, he was crying about it like a little boop. I got to be careful with the profanity on here, guys. They be coming for me. Up Nup Husky says his tweet wasn't even coherent. Thank you for the super chat. Dwayne says save Kit. That's right. Save Kit, guys. And thank you for this as well, Dwayne. Can't chat. Wish I could. I'm in New York City with my mom. Good luck, Dwayne. Good luck. I know he talked to us about that on call-in. Thank you, B. Rapaport is very busy working, Sabby. Busy talking about Real Housewives. Merry Christmas and thanks for the show. Merry Christmas to you as well. Thank you so much for the super chat, Dana Mitchell. Sabby, you're awesome. Thank you. Thank you. That is a beautiful Christmas present. Thank you, Dana. And thank you, Frank. Wow, Michael just going off. And for what? I really think there's something wrong with him. Something not right. We're going to go to the next story here because when I tell you, it seems like a lot of things are happening at once. Wait till you hear this story. So you have Israel and Gaza. You have Russia and Ukraine. And now President Xi Jinping is actually giving a very stern warning to Joe Biden in reference to Taiwan. Before we get into this story, don't forget to smash that like button, guys. Thank you so much. That helps me out with the algo. And we're going to go ahead and dive into this story coming out of China, a stern warning for Joe Biden.
NBC News is reporting exclusively today about a blunt message delivered by China's President Xi Jinping to President Biden when the two leaders had their summit in San Francisco last month. Joining us now is the leader of the NBC team reporting on all of this. Meet the press moderator, Kristen Welker. Kristen, there were a lot of things that the team, our national security team, Carol Lee, Courtney Kuby, you.
And you.
Well, this team found out really what was being said in this candid conversation that was described by the White House and the State Department in San Francisco last month.
Absolutely. This was a blunt but candid conversation, not confrontational, but we are told by three sources, current and former officials who are familiar with this conversation, that President Xi said to President Biden that he does intend to reunify Taiwan and that he has not chosen a timeline to do that yet. He was also apparently complaining about the elections in Taiwan. And prior to this meeting, Chinese officials had asked that President Biden issue a statement supporting Chinese reunification, something that, of course, the president and the White House did not do. We've just gotten fresh, exclusive reaction from Senator Lindsey Graham to this reporting. I'm going to read you what he says. He called.
Before we get into Lindsey Graham, heads up, guys. President Xi Jinping has told Joe Biden that he plans to reunify Taiwan with China. Now, I want to remind you again, according to the One China policy, Taiwan was already a part of China. So when there were these comments from people like Pelosi, who actually went to visit Taiwan, again, trying to escalate things with China, in my opinion, she was trying to like poke the bear. She makes these statements that, well, we're going to do everything that we can to protect Taiwan's independence and that China better not try to invade Taiwan. Well, how are you going to invade something that already belongs to you? That was the part to me, you know, we got to push back on some of the rhetoric, the vocabulary that's being used when people say that he's going to try to invade Taiwan. How can you invade something that is already a part of you? Again, according to the one China policy. Now, listen to what Lindsey Graham said. Mr. Warhawk himself.
The story, as reported, beyond unnerving. He goes on to say, quote, I will be working with Democratic and Republican senators to do two things quickly. First, create a robust defense supplemental for Taiwan. And second, draft pre-invasion sanctions from hell to impose on China if they take action to seize Taiwan. I believe there is strong bipartisan support to stand up to Chinese communist aggression. So that is how Senator Lindsey Graham is responding. Again, we are just starting to get this response coming in. Andrea, though, taking a step back, the big picture here. Look, this is consistent with the messaging that President Xi has conveyed for years as it relates to Taiwan. What is significant, though, is the setting in which he delivered this message, the fact that he said it directly to President Biden, the fact that this took place at a meeting that was really intended to lower the temperature between these two leaders and between these two countries in the wake of the Chinese spy balloon incident last year. So it was a moment that caused officials to take note in the room. What does it mean? What, if any, timeline is he looking at? All of that remains to be seen, Andrea, but it certainly does raise fresh concerns of aggression.
First of all, it was a weather balloon. Notice how they're still calling it a spy balloon. Again, that's on purpose, trying to create fear among the American people that China is this big, scary, bad guy. Now, there are criticisms to be had about China. There are criticisms to be had about Xi Jinping. However, a lot of the criticism that has been exploited in the mainstream media has been proven wrong, and they continue to lie. Now, this is basically a chess move from Xi Jinping because he's looking at it like this. Have not met Xi, but if I were him, I'd think this way. Joe Biden seems to be in a little bit of trouble. Poll numbers are really down. Has the U.S. government involved in a proxy war with Ukraine? Sending arms to Israel when a lot of people in the world, including majority of Democrats, want a ceasefire, a permanent ceasefire, and do not agree with what Israel is doing to Gaza? Saudi Arabia has decided to come along with us and be a part of BRICS, and they're hanging out with me and they're hanging out with Russia too. Maybe it might be time to just put one more nail in the coffin. Let me call up Biden and let him know, hey, just to let you know, I'm going to reunify Taiwan with China. Kick them wise down. The United States government cannot afford to go to war with China. Lindsey Graham is out of his mind. Do people understand? He's out of his mind. To sit here and say, I can get bipartisan support to push back against China. I'm sure he can, but we cannot go to war against China, period. These people are crazy. This guy hasn't even made it to the second term. We are already involved in 2 international conflicts, possibly a third, if they get involved with this conflict with China. So this is what I want you to see. One of the things they talked about was how the reunification could influence Taiwan's upcoming election. What angers me about these shows, particularly Meet the Press, NBC, etc., they only bring on the side that fits their narrative. You need to hear from other people that are on the other side and hear why they have this way. Like, these are mainstream media networks, right? They can't get an interview with Xi Jinping. I bet they could. I bet they really could. But listen to this in reference to the upcoming elections in Taiwan.
So, Kristen, it sounds like that was not about all that was discussed about this. What more do you know about what the administration's reaction has been, policymakers' reaction? I mean, this happened a little while ago. What's going on behind the scenes since then?
Well, so we know that President Xi was very blunt. He was candid. He was not confrontational. And he basically said that he plans to reunify, that China plans to reunify Taiwan with the mainland. Look, this fits into what he has consistently said publicly, but Garrett, it lands differently when he is speaking directly to the president and against the backdrop of these tensions between the U.S. and China in the wake of that spy balloon incident. The whole purpose of this meeting was to try to bring down the temperature on what were mounting tensions. We are getting
I just have to keep correcting weather balloon. Thank you.
Getting some reaction. The White House not responding, but Senator Lindsey Graham saying this: I will be working with Democratic and Republican senators to do two things quickly. First, create a robust defense supplemental for Taiwan. And second, draft pre-invasion sanctions from hell to impose on China if they take action to seize Taiwan. I believe there is strong bipartisan support to stand up to Chinese communist aggression. When you listen to what President Biden said there after the meeting, kind of reiterated the U.S. position as it relates to China and Taiwan. But of course, we know that this president has been asked about this, and he has said that, yes, he would be prepared to use the U.S. military if China were to make a move to try to take Taiwan. The White House has walked those comments back, as you know. But again, this was a comment, Garrett, that really that was noticed by officials in the room because of this fraught backdrop against which President Xi made that statement.
When I listened to this reporting with my congressional reporter hat on, I was thinking about the sanctions in the context of the Russia-Ukraine war, too, where sanctions had not been as effective as everybody in Washington thought they would be at changing Putin's calculus. I wonder if it would be different with Xi. But I also wonder about this meeting in particular, because as you pointed out, this is all about lowering the temperature. And
lowering the temperature. So they want to put sanctions on China. He's talking about putting sanctions on China. Because this is what the U.S. government does. We just go around putting sanctions on all these different countries across the world.
The other big takeaway from this was that they were going to reestablish military-to-military communications, which also seems not to have happened. So how is the administration, how should we evaluate the success of that meeting based on your reporting and what we already know?
I think the big success of that meeting was that it happened at all because the two leaders hadn't met in a year. They did agree to reestablish military-to-military communications. As you rightfully point out, that has not happened yet. They also reached an agreement to try to tackle the issue of fentanyl. And remember, President Biden said trust but verify. So the United States very much in a posture of looking at China with skepticism as it relates to some of those commitments. But again, Garrett, what's significant is that these two leaders got into the same room and talked and tried to reach an agreement on some of these really
always issues. Rather have them talking than not talking.
That's right.
Kristen Welker, excellent reporting. Garrett. I want to turn to Bonnie Lynn for some analysis here. So what's your reaction to this ominous warning by President Xi, the fact that they are having this conversation face-to-face in the same room about reuniting Taiwan with mainland China?
Well, thank you, Garrett. And it's also always great to be with Kristen, too. So in terms of Xi's warning, I don't think that's anything new. I don't view it as more ominous than before. We've known for some time that China has been investing in its capabilities to be able to take the island by force if needed. I do think it's important to think about the larger context in which Xi is providing that warning. The first I will point out is China is very worried about the upcoming Taiwan elections, as Kristen pointed out. And from their perspective, the current DPP presidential candidate and his running mate are viewed from China as more problematic than the current DPP president. So part of Xi's comments was signaling to the United States that we're very worried about the election and we have deep distrust of one of the political candidates. And I think two other layers on that. One is also from the Chinese perspective, they believe that the United States can intervene and shape the election, right?
So that's where the worry comes in from China, is that they feel that the U.S. government would find a way to intervene with the election in Taiwan and put in a leader that they want. Wouldn't surprise me. They have done this before. Now, I want you to hear a different perspective, because we're used to hearing about, actually, we'll get to that later. Yeah, we'll go to this one next. I want to show you something else because I don't want you to think that the U.S. fear-mongering and tension with China is just because of Taiwan. The U.S. government, regardless if the president has been Republican or if the president has been Democrat, the U.S. government has been heavily pushing back against China for years. A lot of that has to do with economic reasons and also technology. I want to show you something. The U.S. is losing the tech war with China. Listen to this. Get ready for it, folks. It is what it is. We just got to be honest here.
I will just share with you a few points here. One is that as a scholar who focuses on the Chinese model of development, I always say China has indeed succeeded in building socialism.
You see that part right there? China has indeed succeeded in building socialism. Remember, the US government does not like that. They feel that if you build some type of socialism, that it could spread and then that will threaten capitalism. So keep that in mind. We have to go back to the war in Vietnam, right? Remember the McCarthy hearings. Remember those issues around communism, this fear of socialism and things like that. They don't want that to spread because it threatens capitalism. But there's more.
For one thing, China is the largest economy since 2014 by purchasing power parity. So it's already 9 years into this status. And China produced the world's largest middle class, 400 million people, real middle class. When they go to America, they're also middle class. So larger than the US population.
Let's pause about the middle class part. China producing the largest middle class. At one point or another, we had a large middle class in the United States, but over the years that has continued to shrink because of the top 0.01% exploiting so many people at the bottom. More people are going into the working class category. More people are going into poverty. People have been slipping down. Instead of rising, people have been sinking.
China is at the forefront of the new industrial revolution. I just got this Huawei Mate 60 yesterday. I know it's better than Apple, the iPhone, yeah. And which means already China is different. What's more important is, as we all know, this world order is grossly unfair and unjust. What people call, and many scholars describe as dependency, as a peripheral central relationship. And China is perhaps the first large economy, developing country that has broken through this dependency. In other words, China itself has become a center. I put this way, it's simultaneously the largest trading partner.
China has become a center. China is not dependent on the United States. They're a large economy that is not depending on the West. If anything, we still depend on them. So if they want to go ahead and put sanctions on China, that's also going to hurt people here in the United States because we still get goods and products from China. We don't have a lot of products in this country that are made in America, even in 2023. And they continue to talk about manufacturing is coming back, yada, yada, yada. Okay, cool, good. But are we still making the majority of our products here in this country? No. So we are far behind. And I've been talking about this before in reference to technology. What is being developed in China compared to technology here in the United States? Yes, we have Silicon Valley. But even when you compare it to Silicon Valley, they are light years ahead of us, man. Ahead of us.
Investment partner and the technology partner with the periphery, with developing countries, and with the West, if they prefer, where capability is there. Yeah, of course, they are having their own problems to sort out. So this capacity means a lot. The world is no longer same. For instance, if you look at the US monetary policy so far, in the past, with this kind of printing US dollars, many countries will run into financial crisis and go bankrupt. But this time, technically only a small country called Sri Lanka was completely broken. But other developing countries also experienced tremendous difficulties, but not yet completely broken. Countries like Argentina, like Brazil, in tremendous difficulty, but now they trade with China. Yeah, they borrow Chinese currency or Chinese dollars, whatever. So this means a lot changes in this new world with the rise of China. And concerning the Chinese model, we have to mention, as some of you already mentioned, Chairman Mao and Chairman Deng Xiaoping. Mao's role in political liberation of the Chinese people, in engaging so many social revolutions, land reform, women's liberation, basic education, basic medical system for all Chinese. So this kind of social structure has been laid by Chairman Mao.
You hear that part right there? The healthcare, the education.
Yet it's also true that by the time when Deng Xiaoping came to power, China was a very poor country by per capita GDP. It's lower, or far lower than most African countries. Yet with 4 decades of reform and opening up, indeed, China succeeded in what we call learning from outside world, engage with globalization, but in a critical way. That's very important. As Deng Xiaoping said, we have to be selective. Otherwise, we embrace economic liberalization, but not political liberalization. Even within economic liberalization, we're also selective. As a result, China is one of the few that has indeed outperformed others in globalization. Now with BRI, China is actually trying to shape a new type of globalization. The older type is based on neoliberalism. It's based on more or less zero-sum game. The West win, others lose. Now, BRI is basically based on this philosophy of discussing together, building together, benefiting together. This new type of globalization, it's gaining momentum. Now over 150 countries have joined this, what we call the modest initiative. It's really changing the surface of the world. And behind.
So I'll stop it there. You can watch the rest of that. It's a longer discussion. You can watch the rest of this video. Why the U.S. is losing the tech war with China. That's on Thinkers forum there. But I want to show you something else as well, because it's not just about tech. It's also about the banks. So if I actually show you the top 50 banks in the world, we're just going to look at the top 10. Obviously, I know you guys don't want to see 50 banks, obviously. Let's look at the top 10 banks in the world. Okay? Not necessarily largest, the top. Current rank is the first column. Previous rank is the second column. We're going to look at the current rank. Number 1, the Industrial and Commercial Bank of China Limited. Number 1, China. Number 2, China Construction Bank Corporation. Number 2, China. Number 3, Agricultural Bank of China Limited. That's number 3, China. The top 3 are China. Number 4, Bank of China Limited. Top 4 are China. You don't see an American bank until we get to number 5, which is JP Morgan Chase Bank National Association. Number 6, BNP Paribas SA. Number 7, China Development Bank. Number 8, Bank of America National Association. Number 9, MUFG Bank Ltd. And number 10, Credit Agricole SA. The point that I'm trying to make, folks, is this. The top 4 banks in the world are in China. And this was not always the case. This has evolved over time. JP Morgan used to be higher on that list. So that's another reason why the U.S. has this beef with China. Now, Xi Jinping, there's been a lot of things that have been said about him, but I do want to show you this conversation here, because Joe Biden actually made the statement during an interview, and he said he referred to Xi Jinping as a dictator. Well, There is a woman from Iowa who actually is friends with Xi Jinping and has been friends with him for 25 years. I want you to hear how she describes him. Sometimes it's important to hear the other side.
In San Francisco, a carefully choreographed reset of the rocky U.S.-China relationship. U.S. President Joe Biden, Chinese President Xi Jinping, a meeting months in the making, 4 hours of talks, meticulously planned photo ops, all seemingly going according to plan, until President Biden seemed to go off script.
Mr. President, after today, would you still refer to President Xi as a dictator? This is a term that you used earlier this year.
Well, look, he is. I mean, he's a dictator in the sense that he is a guy who runs a country that is a communist country that is based on a form of government totally different than ours.
Biden's off-the-cuff answer to a question from White House correspondent MJ Lee, drawing a cringe-worthy reaction from U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, and a swift, sharp response from China's foreign ministry.
This is extremely erroneous. It is an irresponsible political maneuver which China firmly opposes.
Beijing had a similar reply back in June, when Biden called his Chinese counterpart a dictator at a California fundraiser. On the streets of Beijing, this man seems to agree with Biden's description.
One-party system, to be honest and open, that is a dictatorship.
Something he says keeps China stable, putting a positive spin on Biden's definition of the word. Beijing's communist rulers have long argued stability makes their system superior to Western democracies. They never, ever use the word dictator. Neither does Chinese state media, ignoring Biden's controversial comment even as it made headlines around the world, instead focusing on President Xi's personal diplomacy with the U.S. president, like the moment they compared armored limousines.
It's like that Cadillac we have over there. They call it the Beast.
On China's heavily censored social media, not a single mention of the outrage over Biden using the D word for the second time in 6 months. The Chinese government takes that word very personally, blasting Germany's foreign minister for similar comments in September.
What sign would that be for other dictators in the world, like Xi?
He wouldn't be the first to fend off that label. Listen to this exchange on 60 Minutes between Mike Wallace and Xi's predecessor, Jiang Zemin.
You are the last major communist dictatorship in the world.
You mean I'm dictatorship?
Am I wrong?
Of course. This is big mistake.
Let's move forward to the friend here. Sorry, I just wanted to fast forward to get through all that. So obviously he called him a dictator. Listen to what his friend from Iowa said. She's been friends with him for 25 years.
And she had a green bean casserole with Xi Jinping. Now, Xi at the time was 31 years old. He was a rising political star in the Communist Party, and he went to Iowa to see how Americans farmed. Landy was the head of a volunteer organization called Sister States, which had been just founded that year to connect Iowans to the rest of the world. And after that meeting, Landy made several trips to China over the years. She came back to visit Landy again. That was in 2012. We got a picture of them together right after he became president of China. And they were together again last night and had a private meeting. So Sarah Landy joins me now. And Sarah, I mean, I think it is incredible for anyone watching, and you try to look at someone of such consequence in the world with so much power, that you would know someone like this over so many years so well. 40 years nearly you have known him. How do you square words like dictator with the man that you have come to know through your lifetime?
Well, one thing is, I think it's too bad that one word throws people off. You know, I think, in China, there is one person that makes most of the decisions. It's Xi Jinping. I don't know that I'd call him a dictator, but he definitely is in charge. That's how they keep order there. But I think many other things we should focus on besides somebody calling a dictator. I don't know, how do you define a dictator? He believes he needs to keep control over lots of his people in order to keep the peace and security and bring them up as equal. It's not the way we believe in the United States. I don't know what you call it, but you wouldn't call it free reign democracy because he does not believe that's the best for his country. So other than squibbling over the name dictator, let's look at what they did talk about. Let's talk about what they did decide.
Notice, see what she does. This is why I thought what she said here was really good. She said, why are we focusing on this title of dictator, and let's focus on what they did actually discuss, because that's something that mainstream media will do, right? To get you to see their narrative or agree with their narrative. They will sit up there and have you focus on terms and labels, things like that, so that you're not focused on the actual meat part of the conversation, the actual substance, and to distract you, honestly.
Maybe to have more airlines going back and forth, maybe more people-to-people exchanges, having teams look into fentanyl and all the other things they're going. So I think there are lots of other ways we should look into this conversation rather than being mad that somebody's called someone a dictator. Calling names doesn't work, but it doesn't tell the story.
And that was the end of the bit there. But again, that was an American woman from Iowa. She has been friends with him for over 25 years. And she does not see him the way that mainstream media, at least in the United States, sees him. Sometimes it's good to hear these other sides, right? I'm gonna go to some of the comments here. 007, thank you. I bet Biden asked Ping for duck and soy sauce. You know what? He probably would ask him. He probably would do something like that. Dr. Nick says, forefront, Sabby, Ukraine, Gaza, Africa, and China. That's right. Also Africa. Thank you, Dijon. Folks aren't silly. We know those donor groups are paying these so-called celebrities and politicians to spew out their political ideas. Yes. Yes. And thank you, 007. Sanctions, ? BRICS goes into effect in January. LOL. Thank you for this as well, Dijon. Shabby, you're the best. Thank you. And thank you, 007. Trickle down economic equal piss on your head. Call it rain. Chocolate rain. This is a video that went viral that people used to make fun of. This guy was like, chocolate rain. Look it up on YouTube when you get a chance. Thank you for the super chat, or excuse me, the tip on Rockfin Skip M. China sent Jack Ma, head of Alibaba, to re-education when he, as a billionaire, got too big for his pants. Our billionaires have been allowed to usurp our democracy. What is that? Usurp? Oh, sorry. To usurp our democracy. They control so far. They're oligarchs. Our oligarch control us. Yeah. Chocolate rain. I see some people in the chat. Remember that? Okay. We are going to our final story tonight, which is Cornel West and Piers Morgan. Piers Morgan has been taking a lot of punches this week. I think he just likes being a punching bag when it comes to Israel and Gaza. This time he actually interviewed Cornel West and a pro-Israel supporter about the war and what is happening there. Let's go ahead and get into that. This is an interesting conversation.
Welcome back, John Stenson. Hamas says the death toll in Gaza has now surpassed 20,000 people, with nearly 2 million others displaced from their often destroyed homes. Or calls for.
Notice what he did there. Watch what he said. Watch what he said about who says what the death toll is. Watch this.
Stenson, Hamas says the death toll in Gaza has now surpassed 20,000 people, with nearly 2 million.
He said Hamas says. He's doing that on purpose, though, by the way.
And others displaced from their often destroyed homes, or calls for a permanent ceasefire are growing ever louder. But in a defiant speech today, Benjamin Netanyahu said Israel will not stop.
מי שחושב שנעצור, פשוט לא מחובר למציאות. לא נפסיק את הלחימה עד להשגת כל המטרות שהצבנו. חיסול החמאס, שחרור חטופינו, והסרת האיום מעזה.
Well, should the US now back calls for a ceasefire, and could Israel face sanctions for the scale of its response October the 7th? Joining to discuss this is the independent presidential candidate, Dr. Cornel West, and international law expert, Eugene Kontorovich. Welcome to both of you. Cornel West, great to have you back on the program. Let me ask you, First of all, Benjamin Netanyahu tonight, very unequivocal. Israel will keep fighting Hamas until they are eradicated, which means there's going to be months and months more of what we've been seeing. What is your response to that?
Well, as you know, I've called for Netanyahu and the IDF to be brought before the ICC, the International Criminal Court, Article 6, 7, and 8, crime of genocide, crime against humanity, and war crime. And what I mean by that is we need to live in a world in which we fundamentally believe that Palestinian suffering has the same value as Jewish suffering. Jewish suffering has the same value as Palestinian suffering. If this were a Palestinian occupation and domination, a Palestinian genocide against Jews in which there were nearly 8,000 precious Jewish babies killed in 50 days, we'd have a qualitatively different discussion, qualitatively different response. Yep. And I believe Biden, Harris, Austin, we can go right down the line, Kirby, Blinken, they are complicitous with Israel's war crimes against the Palestinians. Has Hamas committed war crimes? Absolutely, they've committed war crimes, but not crimes of genocide. And when Netanyahu invokes Amalek, 1 Samuel 15:3 in the biblical text, and I speak as a Christian, I know the difference between those divine sanctioned genocidal commands, kill every woman, kill every child in order to procure our end. He's invoked a number of times. October 28th, he's invoked Amalek. That's genocidal intent. Yep. And this genocidal attack flowing from that intent. We have to have a moral consistency across the board. Every baby, no matter who they are, world, have the same value.
Let's pause here for a second. There's something I want to add. Dr. West is right when he says that if it were the other way around, if it was Hamas doing this to Israel at this point in time, and it was Israeli civilians, over 20,000 Israeli civilians that would, first of all, would never even have gotten to that point. It would have never even reached that point. The U.S. government would have intervened. They would have done everything that they could to help people in Israel, right? Do you think Joe Biden would stand there right now and not say anything and just, I'm just going to ignore these protesters outside? No, the U.S. government, Hakeem Jeffries, Richie Torres, Joe Biden, all the congressmen and women and president that take so much money from the Israeli lobby, they would raise Cain. They would do everything that they could to save the Israeli civilians. But when it comes to the Palestinian civilians, they're like, well, Israel says they're doing whatever they can to prevent civilian casualties, which is a blatant lie. And Biden knows that. And all the members of Congress know that. But they're all bought. That's the problem. They're bought and paid for. But we would never just sit back and say that this is okay if it were the other way around.
Go to Eugene then, your response to that. I mean, you'll be aware, Eugene, that much of the world is now watching with horror the scale of Israel's response. And when they hear Netanyahu saying this isn't going to stop until we've got rid of all of Hamas, and at best estimates, they've only killed 6,000 to 7,000 Hamas terrorists, and that's just if you take IDF's word for it. That means that 80% of Hamas has not been eliminated yet. How many civilians are going to get killed in the next few months or even years before Hamas is eradicated? And how, in the end, does that help either peace in the region, or how does it stop just massive escalation and radicalization against Israel?
So how many civilians will die is largely a function of Hamas's decisions, because Hamas has a specific strategy of trying to kill as many Israeli civilians as they can, as they did on October 7th, and trying to get as many of their own civilians killed, which they do by...
Pause. If Hamas actually had a strategy to kill as many Israeli civilians as they could, don't you think they would have killed more than 1,200? Oh, that number keeps decreasing, right? Don't you think they would have? Do you see them killing Israeli citizens right now, civilians? Don't you think they would have killed more people?
Hiding in tunnels under populated areas, basing themselves in schools, in hospitals. Their strategy is to roll up their civilian death toll, which at the same time Israel does everything to limit. Israel is only targeting Hamas. Now, Hamas makes it difficult by hiding amongst civilians, and the deaths of those civilians are Hamas war crimes.
This guy is blatantly lying, because if you're only targeting Hamas, the women that were shot that were leaving the church were not Hamas, obviously. They were shooting civilians wholesale. Think about what he just told you. He said he knows, he said they're in the tunnels under the schools and the hospitals. If you know they're in the tunnels, why are you bombing above the tunnel? If you know they're in the tunnels, why haven't you gone into the tunnels? Because their plan is not really to take out Hamas. The plan is to kill all the people and to wipe them out. That's why. This makes no fucking sense. I don't really understand how anyone can sit here and listen to this and not even push back on it just even a little bit. Use your brain. If I know that you are hiding in a tunnel, think about this. If I know, you tell me, I know that you're hiding at Chick-fil-A. I'm not going to go to Burger King. That makes no sense. They knew bin Laden was hiding in tunnels. They went into the tunnel. They're not trying to actively destroy Hamas. They're trying to wipe out the people. All of them. That includes the children. How many have they killed? When it comes to people that they've killed, how many of them have been civilians and how many of them have been Hamas? Obviously, they haven't weeded out Hamas.
Accusations of genocide, it's what psychologists call projection, accusing your enemy, the other side, of exactly what you're doing to distract and whitewash what you're doing. October 7th was a genocidal invasion of Israel where Hamas invaded Israel, chopped up families in front of each other, burned people alive. And now Israel is responding more moderately than any country would.
So those things have been debunked multiple times. See, again, this is the Zionist playbook. They continue to repeat something, whether it's a lie or not. They continue to repeat it over and over until you start to accept it. The problem is this time around, a lot of people in the public, particularly in the United States, are not accepting it because we see what's actually happening. We've seen the video footage coming from Gaza. We know what's really going on there, but this guy's continued to repeat. People are still going onto interviews and are still repeating beheaded babies. After that has been debunked multiple times. This is one of the tactics that they use. Continue to repeat it until people believe it.
Let me put you on that in terms of its supposed moderate response. In the last few days alone, we've seen the IDF shoot dead 3 Israeli hostages who were wearing no shirts and had a banner asking for help. They were surrendering whoever they were. They turned out to be hostages. Then we had 2 women, innocent women, standing outside a Catholic church who were also gunned down by IDF snipers in an action that the Pope called terrorism. You've also got President Biden describing the bombing campaign as indiscriminate, which in itself, that description implies a war crime. So this idea that Israel's being moderate in its response, I don't think is borne out by reality, is it?
President Biden has actually said, and other American officials have said, that Israel is acting more morally than any other army. Now, show me a war without inadvertent civilian casualties.
I'm sorry, but the numbers don't actually agree with that. They have said the casualties in Gaza are worse than any of the other casualties, any of the other war casualties. That is a lie. The data can show you that. See what I mean about just the blatant lies that they're telling? He's just going to skip over the fact that the IDF killed those 3 hostages while they were waving the white flag. It was never about the hostages. And this is what I want people to understand. It was never about saving and rescuing the people. It was about destroying the Palestinians in Gaza, taking the land and the resources for themselves. Hamas is not in the West Bank. What's the excuse for beating people and humiliating people in the West Bank and the illegal settlements that they have there? What's the excuse? Blatant lies.
When America cleared ISIS out of Mosul, 10,000 civilians were killed in that city alone, and America was not fighting an enemy next door that was actively shooting rockets at it and holding its citizens hostage.
Oh, now it's America's fault. You see this? The point is, that's a terrible example to bring up. The problem is, you were supposed to learn from those casualties that happened before. We were supposed to learn from Hiroshima. That was a bad thing. Joe Biden said this to Netanyahu. No. Let's not bring up those examples. Those were horrible. We are not supposed to repeat them, right? We can bring up Bosnia as well. The same catastrophes that took place in Bosnia. Remember, the Bosnian refugees were allowed to come to the United States and take shelter here. There were Vietnamese refugees that were allowed to come to the United States and take refuge here. The U.S. government does not want Palestinians to come to the United States from Gaza to come here and take refuge here. These people are trapped. They have no way out. So yes, if you are indiscriminately bombing them, which they are over and over and over again, and stop saying you're defending yourself. You're not defending yourself all these months later. You're slaughtering people. You're killing people, which has always been the damn plan, was to get rid of them. And there's different ways that they can do it. So people say, well, they weren't going to war with them before. They were going into Gaza and mowing the lawn. They were giving them dirty water. You can die from that. You know this, right? It may not be quick, but dirty water can create disease. Dirty water can create cholera. Like that came back to Haiti because they had unclean water. There are other ways to kill people off. And if they're not being bombed right now, they're starving. So there are different ways that you can go about doing that.
Professor West had his way, Nazi Germany would still rule Europe. Because, of course, hundreds of thousands of German civilians died in the war against Nazi Germany.
All right, but let me bring
the Confederacy would still rule half of America. Let me just say.
The audacity for this guy to sit here and say to a black person on this show that they would be okay with Nazis ruling Europe. The audacity. To say that, how could you even say, seriously? He blatantly said Professor West would be okay with Nazis ruling Europe. Cornel West is a black man. These are the type of lies that they say, just blatant blanket of lies.
About the hostages, because that's a sensitive point. That's a tragic incident, of course. And we saw today that the mother of one of the hostages said she does not blame the Israeli soldiers. She embraces them because she knows that Hamas, again, is responsible for their deaths because Hamas has used every kind of subterfuge to trap Israeli soldiers.
Let me go to
fake surrenders and suicide.
Let me bring back in Cornel West. Cornel West, the moral conundrum here for many people is that what happened on October the 7th was utterly horrific. An appalling terrorist attack on mostly civilian, innocent people.
He's a precious human being.
And when you have, Cornel, here's my question. Here's my question. When you have Hamas stating since October the 7th, we want to do that again and again and again, when it is their mission statement to wipe out Israel and any Jews who live in Israel.
I'm sorry, but that is another lie. That is another fucking... Piers Morgan has repeated this lie multiple times, and there have been several people that have come onto this show and have debunked that. That is not in their charter. Their charter has been rewritten. This has been debunked multiple times. Piers Morgan, also notorious. You need to know who owns Talk TV, people. This is Rupert Murdoch's creation. Rupert Murdoch is a Zionist. So never think that Piers Morgan is ever going to take the side of what's happening with the Palestinian people. And it's not even about if you condemn Hamas or if you support Israel. It's about, do you think the Palestinian people have a right to self-determination and liberation? Do you think that these people deserve the right to be free and not occupied and oppressed? That is actually the question that people like PIERS should ask, but he's paid not to. He's paid to say, but do you condemn Hamas?
When we all can see and hear them say this with brazen impunity, what is Israel supposed to do other than try to remove Hamas?
Hamas is very much like the Jewish Irgun, which is a terrorist group responding to vicious British imperialism that killed innocent Arabs. Every resistance movement against colonialism, domination, and oppression, apartheid-like conditions, you have nonviolent streams, you have nonviolent streams. The first Intifada was nonviolent. The second one was primarily nonviolent, only with rocks. And what did JFK say? When you make nonviolent revolution impossible, you make violent revolution inevitable. You had to, with the Jewish Irgun, there's always been terrorist expression. The problem is the IDF, which comes out of Jabotinsky, which was tied to the Jewish and terrorist history, and this is a part of Jewish history. It's not all. There's been the Einsteins and the Albert Magnus and others who call for very different things. But when I hear my brother Eugene say they've only killed Hamas, they killed 2 Christian women in front of a church, a mother and a grandmother. You mean almost 8,000 children are being shielded by Hamas? Do you really believe the world is going to think that's serious? These justifications are as weak as pre-sweetened Kool-Aid when we see the massive suffering of precious Palestinians who are innocent. So this notion that somehow you can continue to put forward these lies, though, Brother Eugene, the world is no longer convinced. Okay, and this is true within the Jewish community.
I've got to leave the debate. I'm sorry, we've run out of time. I've got to leave the debate there. It's an interesting debate. Passions run high on both sides. Thank you both very much for joining me.
What was funny about this part is like Cornel West said what he said, and then he just sits back in the chair and starts rocking. That was funny because the reality is this. You have all of these children, over 8,000 children. So we're supposed to believe that Hamas is hiding behind all these kids, all these kids that have been killed. Really? I'm glad that he brought up the part that JFK said, because let's keep it real, people. When people do talk about Hamas, I think a part that's missing is that these are people that were born in a cage. They were born encaged, fenced in like cattle, in one of the most densely populated areas in the world. Dirty water. Every now and then we turn off the electricity whenever we feel like it. Sorry if you're trying to operate on someone at the hospital. Not allowed freedom of movement. Do you know what it's like to be born in a cage? Born there. I'm not talking about people who have been to prison. Even people who have been to prison have lived outside of a cage. But you're born in it. What are you supposed to do? I don't like violence. I don't agree with violence. At the same time, why was it okay all these years for Israel to be violent against them? Where was the pushback then? Where was the condemning about what Israel was doing to the Palestinian people, PIERS? All this time. Why did it take until October 7th for some of these pundits to actually start saying something for once? Some of the same people who told me this is not an important issue. And then the war started October 7th. All of a sudden, like, oh, whoa, this might be important. So the Palestinian lives weren't important until the war happened for you? All these years, they say nothing. They're silent. This is not an important issue because it's not happening to American people. But you thought it was important to protect Ukrainians. So what's the difference? When it came to Ukraine, I saw ads in front of the football games. Everybody was like, oh, we got to stand by. Oh, protect those precious. Gentlemen actually came onto the media, and actually said, well, yeah, well, they're blonde hair and blue eyed. Read the textbook, people. Cornel West would be a threat to Joe Biden, particularly in Michigan. West threatens to peel off Arab American voters in Michigan. Cornel West is making a bold play for a key Biden constituency in a crucial swing state on an issue that's bitterly divided the Democratic Party. The independent candidate campaigned in Michigan this week to offer Arab American voters angry over the Israel-Hamas conflict a new political home in 2024. The day of the campaign trial began with West promising he would ask the International Criminal Court to investigate potential war crimes committed by the IDF in a press release. During multiple roundtable discussions, the university professor called Israel an apartheid state, and West accused the U.S. government of supporting a genocide of the Palestinian people. West threatens to peel off Arab American voters in Michigan, and Biden needs Michigan in order to win. Something to think about, folks. We are going to do call in tonight. If you haven't had a chance to do so, go ahead and hit that like button. Thank you very much. I'm going to take a quick break. I'll be back. Eric, I think there's some starred comments, and I'll come back for call in.
All right. All right. Here we are on our post-Christmas Tuesday. So this is the part of the show where we give Sabrina a little break before we jump into the call in. So call in is where we like to hear from you all and what you think about these stories here. Let's take a little preview here of the call in. Here we go. Yeah, tonight, 142 of these. Yeah, they were threatening to take Colin off, like to what do you call it? Like replace it with something else and get rid of it. But Colin lives, so we keep doing them. Sean King banned Israel and Iran and more. And of course, on the old Colin, you can talk about these things or anything you like. And we have good conversations out there. In fact, here, if you want to get a little head start, I put the call-in link in the chat, and Sabrina pretty well always pins it to the top of the chat. And yeah, you can do call-in on your computer, you can do call-in on your smartphone. And yeah, like I said, there are good conversations out there. Let's, yeah, while Sabrina's away, we're giving her a little break before she comes back. Let's check. We have some super chats queued up here. Let's see. Thanks for this one, Sparky. Bethlehem attacked on Christmas. Wasn't the crucifixion enough? Thanks for that one. And Sparky says, love you, dream girl. Oh, thank you, Sparky. Appreciate that. And thanks for this one, this super chat, Lap66. Best wishes to Sabby, one of the best international reporters in the English language, and her supporters. Israel stole Christmas before they bombed Bethlehem on Christmas Day to stick it to you. Thanks for that, Lap66. And thanks for this one, CB Jamrock TV. Liars talk through their teeth, and he is full of IDF and lies. I certainly wouldn't argue with that from that guy who was on with against Cornell. And thanks for the super chat, Maka Dama. Excuse me if I pronounced that wrong. The guy from the Colette sounds like a Holocaust denier. I mean, you know, it's their lies and their stories get more than a little bit thin, and like nobody's just believing this stuff anymore. And from Joy Duncan, Rupert Murdoch owns Fox and some of the newspapers in the UK, New York Times. billionaires who control the media are not doing it to help people. Yeah, definitely, follow that money, and you definitely have the same top 0.1% class that's owning the media, that's also basically owns the government, through their money, through their corrupt influence. And thanks for the super chat, Sparky. Doesn't matter even. It doesn't matter if Hamas even exists anymore. Israel would pretend they still existed so they could continue to flatten and annex Gaza. Yeah, I mean, all wars, especially all modern wars, are resource wars. It's all about getting at the land and the resources, and that's the real point of it. And there's also the aspect of it that wars are profitable. It's the old Smedley Butler thing there. War is a racket. And, you look at any of these wars, and, I think the biggest part of it is simply the money. It's good business for, the weapons manufacturers, the military industrial complex. And I think it's always important to make that connection. So, so I thought, Dr. West did well on that one. I think he was ready for that, for that question from Pierce Morgan, aren't they terrorists? And Dr. West said, very clearly, I mean, the guy can think rings around, those other two losers on the screen. It was that you're always, if you're going to occupy people and put them in what's basically a concentration camp and have these situations, you really can't be surprised when there's violent reactions to that. It doesn't make it wrong or right necessarily, but it's going to happen, and it's not like this is the first time it's happened. And to just put that in a vacuum and then say, oh, we have to, Israel has to go in and do all this stuff is of course ridiculous, as so much of the things they're, that's coming out of Israel and the Zionists are. It just doesn't hold water anymore. There's too much information out there. There's too much video, which is huge. We have this right before our eyes, and these kind of lies just can't hold up anymore. I also noticed this one come by where Corey said, Corey Lavalel said, is CORNEL still running? And, I do want to report that, yes, Cornel West definitely is still running. I know some people feel like he's disappeared, and it's also tough, during this holiday season where, it's in this kind of in-between season. But, what I'd say is, give it a chance, look at January, what comes around in January, what they're doing in January and moving forward. And, and I'm still hopeful that the West campaign will build up and kick into gear. And thanks for the super chat, Random Nobody. Dr. West should be our spiritual leader. We need someone else to make it happen. Yeah, I mean, I can't think of a better person to to put in that role. I mean, there's been a lot of criticism of West and the West campaign, and and I understand where it's coming from, and there have been reasons for that. I mean, one thing I'd say is that if you're going to criticize Cornel West in the campaign, you should also be clear of what you think they should be doing. It shouldn't just be this. It's unproductive for it to just be this thing of just saying, oh, they're doing it wrong. It's dead in the campaign and all. It's dead in the water and all this stuff. And I wouldn't even put a criticism, but my recommendation for the campaign is to really start focusing on corruption as a central issue. It's my old, MCDS, money, corruption. And then from there, you have demands. You demand an end to the corruption. And I think the campaign also needs to be putting forth real solutions, which gets into, just having concrete things of what you do about it, and it's those things of public financing of campaigns and fix the Constitution and ranked choice voting and whatnot. But I think there's a real path there to do something really powerful. And I hope they can jump into that and do it.
Yeah.
New super chat.
Thank you, Blarg. Thanks, Sabby and Eric. Love the show. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Blarg.
And We are going to head over.
Blarg.
Yeah, we're going to head over to Call In, where we can talk about this and many other things that have been on your mind.
All right, see you in the call-in.
It is episode 142, Shaun King ban Israel and Iran and more. Anything else that you want to discuss, let's head on over there and chat. The link for call-in is pinned to the top of the live chat, so you can click on that. Many of you still have the app. If you don't have the app, you can actually click on it with your computer, your laptop as well. You can also call in from your laptop, not just the app on the phone. So let's head on over there. A lot has happened. A lot has taken place. It's time for a little call-in chat. So I'll see you guys there. Again, the link is pinned to the top of the chat. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.